The air in the maintenance corridor tasted like metal and old smoke. Riley pressed her back against the cold wall, pulling her 3 cubs closer as another group of Felicians walked past. She held her breath, hoping they wouldn't notice her family huddled in the shadows. But they did notice. How could they not? Her white fur practically glowed under the harsh station lights. The other Felicians, with their beautiful spotted coats of gold and brown, looked at her for just a second before turning away. Not with anger. With something worse. Disgust. Riley was used to it by now. 3 years of being treated like trash teaches you to expect nothing better. But it still hurt. Every single time. Her youngest cub, little Mira, tugged at her arm. "Mama, my tummy hurts." "I know, baby. Just hold on a little longer." Riley's voice cracked. She'd been saying that for 2 days now. 2 days since their last real meal. She'd given the cubs her half of their final ration bar that morning, and now her own stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside. The Felicians were supposed to be a great species. Warriors, explorers, engineers who built ships that could cross entire galaxies. Riley had been proud to be Felixian once. Back when her family still claimed her. Back before her cubs were born. Back before everyone saw her white fur and decided she was broken. The oldest cub, Ivy, sat quietly beside her mother. At 7 years old, she already understood things that children shouldn't have to understand. Like how to stay invisible. How to make yourself small. How to not cry when people said cruel things about your family. The middle cub, Cole, tried to be brave. He was 6 and still believed that if they just kept trying, someone would eventually help them. Riley didn't have the heart to tell him the truth, that they'd been trying for 3 years and nothing had changed. "Maybe we could try the shipyard on the north deck?" Cole suggested. His voice was hopeful. Too hopeful. Riley shook her head. "I already went there yesterday. They wouldn't even let me through the door." She tried everywhere on this station. Every repair shop, every cargo bay, every place that might need an engineer. And Riley was a good engineer. She trained for years before the cubs were born. She knew plasma systems and neural networks better than most mechanics twice her age. But none of that mattered when you looked like she did. The Felixian people had rules about genetics. Old rules that said certain traits were acceptable and others weren't. Albinism, her white fur and pink eyes, was considered one of the worst flaws. A sign of weak bloodlines. Something that needed to be removed from the gene pool. When Ivy was born completely white, Riley's family had been horrified. When Cole came next, also white, they'd been angry. By the time little Mira arrived, the 3rd albino cub in a row, Riley's clan had made their decision. They'd put her and the cubs on a transport ship and sent them away. No money. No resources. Just a warning never to come back. That was 3 years ago. Riley had been moving from station to station ever since, always one step ahead of starvation, always searching for work that never came. The maintenance corridor was warm at least. A waste recycling unit nearby pumped out heat as it processed the station's garbage. It wasn't comfortable, but it kept the cubs from freezing during the station's night cycle. Riley looked at her children, thin, dirty, exhausted, and felt rage building in her chest. What kind of galaxy allowed this? What kind of civilization rejected children because of how they looked? "Mama?" Myra's small voice broke through Riley's dark thoughts. "Why don't people like us?" The question hit Riley like a punch. How do you explain prejudice to a 4-year-old? How do you tell your baby that the galaxy considers her defective? "Some people can't see past the outside," Riley said carefully. "They think different means bad. But they're wrong." "Then why won't anyone help us?" Myra's pink eyes, so much like Riley's own, filled with tears. Riley had no answer for that. The morning had started like every other morning for the past 3 months. Riley had left the cubs hidden in the corridor and gone looking for work. She'd cleaned herself up as best she could, brushed her white fur until it looked presentable and practiced her pitch. "I'm a certified engineer. I can work with any plasma system or neural interface. I'm fast, reliable, and I don't charge much." She'd walked into Martinez Freight and Repair with her head high and her credentials ready. The human receptionist had seemed nice enough, calling for the supervisor to come meet this potential new hire. Then Thorin had appeared. Another Felixian. One look at Riley's white fur and his expression had turned cold. "Get out," he'd said. Just those 2 words. Riley had tried to push past the humiliation. "Sir, if you'll just look at my qualifications." "I said get out." Thorin's voice had gotten louder. "We don't hire genetic waste. Your bloodline is contaminated. You're an embarrassment to our entire species." The human workers had stopped what they were doing to watch. Riley had felt their eyes on her, judging, pitying, or worse, agreeing with Thorin. "I have 3 cubs to feed," Riley had said quietly. "Please. I'll work for half the normal rate." Thorin had laughed. Actually laughed. "You could offer to work for free and I still wouldn't hire you. Now get out before I call station security." Riley had left. What else could she do? Now, sitting in the corridor with her starving children, she wondered how much longer they could survive like this. The station had vagrancy laws. If security found them sleeping in the corridors too many more times, they'd be kicked off the station entirely. And Riley had exactly 0 credits for passage anywhere else. They were trapped. Slowly dying. And nobody cared. "Miss? Excuse me, miss?" Riley's head snapped up. A human stood a few meters away watching them. He was older, maybe 50 or 60 years, with gray hair and clothes that were covered in oil stains. His face was lined and weathered like someone who'd worked hard their whole life. Riley's first instinct was to grab the cubs and run. But they were too weak to run far. And honestly, where would they go? "I'm Jack," the human said. His voice was surprisingly gentle. "Jack Turner. I saw what happened this morning. At Martinez Repair." He'd been one of the workers watching her humiliation. Riley felt her face heat with shame. "We're leaving," she said, trying to gather the cubs. "We won't cause any trouble. Hold on." Jack raised his hands like he was trying to calm a frightened animal. "That's not why I'm here. I wanted to. I thought maybe." He seemed to be struggling for words. "Do you really know plasma systems?" Riley blinked. "What?" "Thorin said you're an engineer. Is that true? You know how to fix ships?" Yes. I'm certified in plasma regulation, neural interfaces, and fusion core maintenance." Riley's voice was cautious. "Why?" Jack scratched his head, looking almost embarrassed. "Because I've got a repair shop down on deck 7. Small operation. Just me mostly. But I've got more work than I can handle and most of it's stuff I'm not great at. Plasma systems and neural networks, that's all complicated computer stuff that makes my head hurt." Riley stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" "Yeah, I guess I am." Jack shrugged. "Pay's not amazing but it's steady work. And there's a small room in the back of the shop where you and the kids could stay. Not fancy but it's got a door that locks and it's warm. This had to be a trick. People didn't just offer help. Not to albino Felictions. Not to genetic rejects. Why would you do that?" Riley asked. Her voice came out harsh with suspicion. Jack was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My daughter would have been about your oldest kid's age. If she'd lived." His voice went rough. "She died 15 years ago. Her and her mother both. Transport accident." Riley didn't know what to say to that. "Point is," Jack continued, "I couldn't save my family, but I can help yours. And honestly, I need a good engineer. So this works out for both of us." He looked at the cubs huddled against Riley's side. "Plus those kids need to eat. And you look like you haven't had a decent meal in weeks." Ivy was watching Jack with cautious hope. Cole looked like he might cry. Little Mira had actually fallen asleep against Riley's arm, too exhausted to stay awake anymore. Riley made her decision. What choice did she really have? "Okay," she whispered. "We'll take the job." Jack's weathered face broke into a smile. "Good. That's real good. Come on, let's get you folks somewhere warm. And I think I've got some food bars in the shop that are actually edible." As they walked through the station, Riley kept waiting for the catch. For Jack to change his mind or reveal some horrible condition for his help. But he just led them to a cluttered repair bay filled with ship parts and old tools. The back office was tiny, barely big enough for 4 people, but it had a cot and a small heating unit. To Riley it looked like paradise. Jack pulled out a box of ration bars and juice containers. "Here. Not gourmet but it'll fill you up." Riley's hands shook as she opened the first package. She split it between the cubs, watching them eat with desperate hunger. Tears ran down her face and she didn't even try to stop them. Jack busied himself at his workbench, pretending not to notice Riley crying. "We'll figure out the work schedule tomorrow," he said. "Tonight, just rest. You're safe here." Safe. Riley couldn't remember the last time she'd felt safe. As the cubs curled up on the cot, their bellies finally full, Ivy looked up at her mother. "Is this real, Mama? Can we really stay?" "I think so, baby." Riley stroked her daughter's white fur. "I think maybe things are going to be okay." For the first time in 3 years, Riley actually believed it. Riley woke up in a panic, her heart racing. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she remembered Jack's repair shop. The small office with the cot. Safety. It had been 3 weeks since that first night, and Riley still couldn't quite believe it was real. Every morning she expected to wake up back in that cold corridor with her starving cubs. But every morning she opened her eyes to see the workshop through the office doorway, with Jack already at his workbench, tinkering with some piece of machinery. The cubs were changing too. Ivy's cheeks had color in them again. Cole was gaining weight, his ribs no longer visible through his thin fur. And little Mira, sweet Mira who'd been so quiet and withdrawn, was starting to laugh again. But the biggest change was in Riley herself. She was working. Actually working. Using the skills she'd trained years to learn. And she was good at it. Really, really good. Hey Riley, can you come look at this? Jack's voice called from the main workshop. Riley carefully extracted herself from the pile of sleeping cubs and headed out to the workbench. Jack was hunched over a plasma regulator, scratching his head in frustration. This thing's been giving me grief for 4 days now, he said. All the readings say it should work, but something's just off. Can you take a crack at it? Riley picked up the component, turning it over in her paws. The moment she touched it, she could feel the problem. Like a song that was slightly out of tune. The electromagnetic field was wrong, not broken exactly, just misaligned in a way that most engineers would never detect. Her sensitive paws moved across the surface, adjusting tiny connections, realigning the field harmonics. 20 minutes later, the regulator hummed to life, purring perfectly. Jack stared at it, then at Riley, then back at the regulator. How the hell did you do that? Riley shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. I could feel where the problem was. The field signature was wrong. Feel it? What do you mean feel it? It's hard to explain. Riley set the regulator down carefully. All Felictions have some electromagnetic sensitivity. It's how we navigate and hunt in the wild. But most lose it as they adapt to technology. I never did. A condition makes me more sensitive than normal Felictions. Jack picked up the regulator, examining it like it was some kind of miracle. So you're telling me that the thing everyone treats like a defect actually makes you better at this work? I guess so. I never thought about it that way. Well, start thinking about it that way. Jack handed her another broken component. Because that's not a defect, Riley. That's a gift. And anyone who can't see that is an idiot. Riley felt something warm bloom in her chest. No one had ever called her abilities a gift before. Her entire life, her heightened senses had been just another mark of her genetic inferiority. But Jack saw it differently. Jack saw value where her own people saw only shame. Over the following days, Riley tackled repairs that had been sitting in Jack's backlog for months. Neural interfaces that other mechanics couldn't diagnose. Plasma systems with intermittent failures that made no sense on paper but that Riley could detect with her sensitive touch. Fusion cores with harmonic imbalances so subtle that most scanners missed them entirely. Word started to spread. Quietly at first, then louder. The human on Deck 7 had hired some kind of genius engineer. Ships that other shops had given up on were coming back to life in Riley's careful paws. The cubs were thriving too. Ivy had started helping with simple repairs, her small paws perfect for reaching into tight spaces. She had her mother's gift with machinery, instinctively understanding how systems fit together. Hand me the micro-welder, Riley said one afternoon. Ivy passed it over without hesitation, watching as her mother sealed a connection. Mama, why does the plasma flow this way instead of that way? Riley explained the principles of electromagnetic channeling while they worked. Teaching Ivy felt natural, right? Her daughter deserved to learn these skills. Deserved to know she could be good at something valuable. Cole had found his own path. He'd made friends with a Trician boy named Kip whose father ran a food cart on the promenade. The two of them had started a small trading business, swapping parts and trinkets with other kids on the station. Riley had been terrified the first time Cole asked permission to go to the promenade alone. What if someone hurt him? What if other Felictions saw him and... But Jack had put a hand on her shoulder. Let him go. He needs to learn that not everyone's going to reject him. And honestly, most folks on this station are decent enough. It's your own people who've been the problem. You've been right. Cole came back that evening bubbling with excitement about his new friend and the deals they'd made. He traded a broken data pad for 3 working power cells and a bag of candy. Look, Mama. Kip's dad gave me these for free. Cole held up the candy like it was treasure. For free. Because someone had been kind to her son. Riley had cried that night, overwhelmed by the simple miracle of her children being treated like normal kids. And then there was Mira. Sweet, shy Mira who'd barely spoken for the first 2 years of her life. She'd attached herself to Jack like a barnacle, following him everywhere, asking endless questions in her tiny voice. Jack, why is the sky black in space? Jack, where's Earth? Jack, do humans really have cats that are small like pets? Jack answered every question with patience Riley found astounding. He'd hoist Mira up on his shoulder while he worked, explaining what he was doing in simple terms. He let her hand him tools, even when she handed him the wrong ones. He told her stories about Earth, about oceans and forests and animals she'd never seen. One evening, Riley found Mira asleep in Jack's lap while he worked on accounting reports. The little cub was purring softly, completely content. Sorry, Riley said quietly. I can take her. She's fine. Jack's hand rested gently on Myra's white fur. She's not bothering me. Riley sat down across from him, watching her youngest daughter sleep peacefully. Thank you, she said. For everything. I don't know how to. Don't? Jack's voice was gruff. You don't need to thank me. You've more than earned your keep. That Corellian freighter you fixed yesterday? The captain paid double because you got it working 3 days ahead of schedule. And the Trician merchant whose neural network you repaired? She's telling everyone on the station about us. But you're losing clients too. Because of us. That was the hard part. Some of Jack's regular customers had stopped coming. Word had spread that he'd hired an albino Felixian, and some people, especially other Felixians, didn't want to do business with someone who'd break social taboos like that. The Felixian trade delegation had even sent someone to talk to Jack. A stern official in fancy robes who'd lectured him about cultural sensitivity and genetic standards. Riley had listened from the back office, her heart sinking. Jack was losing business because of her. He was going to realize she wasn't worth the trouble. He was going to... Let me make something real clear, Jack had said, his voice hard as steel. I don't give a damn about your cultural standards. Where I come from, we tried that kind of thinking. We judged people by their skin color, by who they loved, by which god they prayed to. You know what we learned? That it's stupid. Cruel and stupid and a waste of human potential. The official had sputtered. You can't possibly compare. I just did. Now get out of my shop. And tell your delegation that if they don't like who I hire, they can take their business somewhere else. I don't work for bigots. The official had left in a huff. And Riley had cried again, overwhelmed by this human who kept defending her family even when it cost him. But Jack was right about one thing. New clients were starting to arrive. Not many at first, but they came. Ship captains who'd heard about the albino engineer who could fix anything. Merchants whose regular mechanics had failed them. Even a few brave Felixians who cared more about getting their ships repaired than about genetic purity. One of those Felixians was an older female named Vera. She'd brought in a neural interface that 3 other shops had declared unfixable. Riley had diagnosed the problem in minutes and had it working within the hour. Vera had stared at Riley with something like wonder. How long have you been doing this work? I trained for 6 years before my cubs were born. But I've only been working again for a few weeks. A few weeks. Vera shook her head. You're wasted on this small station. You should be working for the fleet. For the military. They'd pay you? She stopped, seeing Riley's expression. Oh, they won't hire you, will they? Because of your fur. No, they won't. Vera's ears flattened with obvious shame. Our people are fools. Absolute fools. She paid double what Riley had asked and told her, I'm going to tell every captain I know about you. Genetic standards be damned. That night, as Riley tucked her cubs into their sleeping area, now expanded with cushions Jack had scrounged from somewhere, Ivy looked up at her with serious pink eyes. Mama? Is Jack our family now? The question caught Riley off guard. She thought about this gruff human who'd given them everything when they had nothing. Who stood up to his own clients to protect them. Who taught Mira about Earth and praised Ivy's mechanical skills and celebrated Cole's small business ventures like they mattered. Who saw worth in them when their own species saw only shame. Yes, Riley said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, baby. I think he is. Ivy smiled and snuggled deeper into her blankets. Good. I like having a family again. Riley left the cubs sleeping and found Jack still at his workbench, working late as usual. She sat down beside him without speaking. After a moment, Jack looked up. Kids okay. They're perfect. Because of you. Jack waved that away. They're good kids. They were always perfect. The galaxy didn't think so. Then the galaxy's an idiot. Jack set down his tools. Look, Riley, I need you to understand something. You and those cubs? You're not charity cases. You're not my good deed. You're family now. And family means you don't give up on each other. Ever. Riley's eyes filled with tears for probably the 100th time since meeting Jack. Humans are strange, she said, her voice shaking. Yeah, we are. But we learned some hard lessons. Took us centuries and a lot of suffering, but we figured out that judging people by how they look is the dumbest possible way to build a society. Jack's weathered face was serious. Your people will figure it out too. Eventually. And when they do, they're going to realize what they lost when they threw you away. Riley hoped he was right. But for now she had everything she needed. A job. A home. Safety for her cubs. And a family, strange and interspecies and absolutely perfect. 2 months had passed since that first night in Jack's shop, and Riley had almost started to believe that life could stay this good. She should have known better. Good things never lasted for people like her. The morning started normal enough. Riley was deep in the guts of a Corellian Transport's neural network when Jack came rushing into the workshop, waving his communication pad like it was on fire. Riley, you need to see this. Now. The urgency in his voice made Riley's stomach drop. She carefully set down her tools and wiped her paws on a rag. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's very, very right. Or maybe very, very complicated. I haven't decided yet. Jack thrust the pad at her. Read this. Riley took the pad, her white paws leaving small marks on the screen. It was an official message from the station administrator's office. Her eyes scanned the text once, then again, not quite believing what she was reading. A Felixian diplomatic vessel had suffered a critical navigation failure. The ship was carrying high-ranking clan leaders to an emergency peace summit, some kind of negotiation to prevent a war between 3 major Felixian territories. The station's chief engineer had examined the problem and said it would take at least 5 days to repair. They only had 2 days before the summit would start without them. I don't understand, Riley said slowly. Why are you showing me this? Because I told Administrator Hayes that you could fix it faster. That you're the best neural interface engineer on this station. Probably the best in 3 sectors. Jack's blue eyes were bright with something between excitement and concern. She wants to offer you the job. Riley felt the blood drain from her face. Me? Fix a diplomatic vessel? Jack, that's insane. They'd never let me. They don't have a choice. It's you or they miss the summit. And if they miss the summit, people die. Lots of people. Jack grabbed her shoulders gently. Riley, this is the same kind of neural array you fixed for that military transport last week. You said it was old tech, Mark 7 military grade. You're the only person on Kara's 9 who specializes in those systems. Riley's mind was spinning. She'd heard about the peace summit on the news feeds. 3 Felixian clan territories had been fighting border skirmishes for decades. Hundreds of people had died. This summit was supposed to finally end the violence. But the ship carrying the diplomats? That would be full of high-ranking Felixians. The kind of people who'd spent their entire lives upholding the genetic standards that had destroyed Riley's life. They'd take one look at her white fur and... They won't let me on their ship, Riley said quietly. You know they won't. Maybe. Maybe not. Jack's grip on her shoulders tightened. But what if they do? What if you could help stop a war? What if you could show them that everything they believe about albinos is wrong? Riley wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. The thought of walking onto a ship full of Felixian elite, of putting herself in front of the very people who'd rejected her entire existence, made her want to hide in the back office and never come out. But then she thought about Ivy, Cole, and Mira. About the kind of galaxy they were growing up in. A galaxy where Felixians killed each other over territory while rejecting anyone who looked different. I'll do it, she heard herself say. Jack's face broke into a proud smile. That's my girl. Now let's go tell Hayes before you change your mind. The meeting with Administrator Hayes was brief and businesslike. A stern woman with sharp eyes, Hayes laid out the situation without sugarcoating anything. The Felixian delegation won't be happy about this. They've already made it clear they'd prefer to wait for a proper engineer. But we don't have time. And frankly, their prejudices aren't my problem. Hayes fixed Riley with a hard stare. Can you really fix their navigation array in under 2 days? Riley thought about the Mark 7 systems. Old military technology, complex but reliable. With her sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, she could diagnose problems other engineers would spend days searching for. Yes, she said. I can fix it. Then you've got the job. Full emergency rates, hazard pay included. I'm also assigning Jack as your assistant. You'll need someone watching your back on that ship. Hayes stood up. The vessel is called the Keeper of Honor. They're docked at Bay 12. Good luck. You're going to need it. Riley and Jack stood outside Bay 12's airlock an hour later. Riley had cleaned her white fur until it shone, dressed in her most professional work clothes. She wanted to look competent, capable, like someone who belonged. But her paws were shaking. "Hey." Jack's rough voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Look at me." Riley met his eyes. "You can do this. I've watched you work for 2 months now. You're brilliant at this stuff. These people need you even if they're too stupid to realize it yet." Jack's weathered face was fierce with conviction. "And if anyone gives you trouble, they'll have to go through me first. Got it?" Riley managed a weak smile. "Got it?" The airlock opened with a hiss. A Felixian security officer stood on the other side, his spotted fur immaculate, his uniform crisp. The moment his eyes landed on Riley, his expression twisted with disgust. "Absolutely not," he said flatly. "No. We're here to repair your navigation system," Jack said, his voice even but with an edge of steel underneath. "Not with that doing the work." The officer gestured at Riley like she was something dirty he'd found stuck to his boot. "We'll wait for a real engineer. A proper one." Riley felt the familiar shame trying to curl up inside her chest. The old instinct to apologize, to back away, to accept that she wasn't worthy. But then she felt Jack's presence beside her, solid and unyielding. And she thought about her cubs back at the shop, about the galaxy she wanted them to grow up in. She straightened her spine. "There isn't time to wait. Your navigation array has a fractured neural matrix and misaligned harmonic resonators. I've fixed a dozen of these systems. I can have yours working in 18 hours. The officer's ears flattened. "I don't care if you can fix it in 18 minutes. You're not setting foot on this ship. Do you have any idea who's aboard? High Matriarch Cross herself is." "Stand down, Lieutenant." The new voice was deep and carried absolute authority. A tall Felixian in military dress uniform emerged from the ship's corridor. His dark fur was streaked with silver, his bearing radiating command. Riley recognized him from news broadcasts, Commander Nathan Blake, a decorated war hero. Blake's golden eyes studied Riley with an unreadable expression. Then he looked at Jack. "You're the human who vouches for her abilities?" "I am. She's the best engineer I've ever worked with. And I've worked with hundreds over 30 years. Bold claim. Blake turned back to Riley. "You understand what's at stake? If the navigation array isn't fixed in time, this summit collapses. The clan territories will almost certainly go to full war. Thousands will die." Riley met his gaze without flinching. "I understand, Commander." Something flickered in Blake's eyes. "Respect maybe. Or just calculation. Very well. You have 18 hours. Lieutenant, escort them to engineering." The lieutenant looked like he'd swallowed something rotten, but he obeyed. As they walked through the ship's pristine corridors, Riley felt every stare like a physical weight. Crew members stopped mid-task to gape at her. Whispers followed in her wake. "Is that really an albino? What's it doing on the matriarch's ship? This is a disgrace. An absolute disgrace." Riley kept her head high, but inside she was trembling. Jack walked close beside her, and once when a young ensign muttered something particularly cruel, Jack's hand dropped to Riley's shoulder in silent support. The ensign shut up immediately. The engineering bay was state-of-the-art, full of equipment that made Riley's mouth water. But the navigation array itself was a disaster. Someone had tried to repair it already and made everything worse. Components were disconnected, neural pathways were damaged, and the harmonic resonators were so far out of alignment that Riley was amazed the ship could navigate at all. "Can you fix it?" Blake had followed them to engineering, watching her carefully. Riley ran her sensitive paws over the array's surface, feeling the broken electromagnetic patterns. It was bad. Really bad. But not impossible. "Yes. But I'll need all 18 hours. Maybe more." She pointed to the damaged neural matrix. "This is fractured in 3 places. The harmonics are completely wrong. It's going to take time to rebuild." "Then you'd better get started." Riley got to work. Jack assisted where he could, handing her tools and components, but this was specialized work that only she could really do. Her sensitive touch felt for the breaks in the electromagnetic fields, finding problems that scanners would miss. Hours blurred together. The ship's crew drifted in and out, watching her work with expressions ranging from hostile to reluctantly curious. Riley ignored them all, focusing entirely on the delicate dance of neural pathways and harmonic frequencies. 6 hours in, she found the first major problem, a completely fried junction node deep in the system. She could work around it, but it would take time and precision. 9 hours in, she hit a second problem. One of the primary resonators had a microfracture that would cause the whole system to fail within a week of any repair. She'd have to replace it entirely. 12 hours in, Riley was running on pure adrenaline and determination. Her paws ached. Her eyes burned. But the array was starting to respond, the electromagnetic songs growing clearer and more harmonious. That's when she hit the third problem. The main interface node was damaged beyond any simple fix. It would need to be completely rebuilt from scratch, and she didn't have the right components. Riley sat back, her heart sinking into her stomach. After all this work, after all these hours, she was going to fail. The summit would collapse. The war would start. And it would be her fault. Commander Blake? Her voice came out hoarse. Yes. I have a problem. The engineering bay went silent as Riley explained about the damaged node. Blake's expression grew darker with every word. Around them, crew members exchanged worried looks. Then Jack spoke up. What about the backup navigation computer? It uses the same kind of nodes, doesn't it? Blake frowned. The backup system? That's our emergency navigation. If the primary fails completely. If the primary fails, you're dead in space anyway, Jack pointed out. But if Riley can fix the primary using parts from the backup, you'll have a functioning ship and you'll make your summit. The logic was sound, but Riley could see Blake struggling with the decision. Cannibalizing the backup system was risky. If something went wrong during the repair, the ship would be left with no navigation at all. Finally, Blake nodded. Do it. But if this doesn't work? It'll work, Riley said with more confidence than she felt. I promise. She and Jack worked together to carefully extract the needed components from the backup system. Every connection had to be perfect. One mistake could fry both navigation arrays and leave the ship stranded. Riley's paws moved with practiced precision, guided by the electromagnetic fields only she could sense. She rebuilt the damaged node piece by piece, adjusting and realigning until the harmonics were perfect. 18 hours and 23 minutes after they'd started, Riley activated the navigation array. The system hummed to life. Every display glowed green. The neural matrix sang with perfect harmony, better than it had been in years. The engineering bay erupted in shocked murmurs. Riley slumped against the console, exhausted beyond anything she'd ever felt. Commander Blake stepped forward, examining the readouts with wide eyes. Then he did something that left Riley completely speechless. He bowed his head to her. A gesture of deep respect in Felixian culture, rarely given by superiors to subordinates. Never given to albinos. You saved countless lives today, Blake said quietly. Thank you, Engineer Riley. Riley's pink eyes filled with tears. It was the first time any Felixian besides her cubs had thanked her for anything. The first time she'd been called Engineer Riley, instead of that albino, or genetic waste. Just doing my job, Commander, she managed to whisper. Blake's expression softened. You did far more than that. He turned to address the crew members watching. Let everyone aboard this ship know, this engineer performed a great service for the clans today. She will be treated with respect. The crew didn't look happy, but they obeyed. As Riley and Jack prepared to leave, she noticed the stares had changed. Still wary, still uncertain, but no longer filled with pure contempt. Back at the shop, Riley collapsed onto the cot while her cubs swarmed her with questions and excited chatter. Jack shooed them away gently and made Riley a cup of tea. You did something incredible today, he said, handing her the steaming cup. Riley smiled weakly. Think it'll actually change anything? Maybe. Maybe not. But you proved something important. Jack's eyes were warm. You proved that their prejudice is their problem, not yours. You showed them what they lost when they threw you away. Riley sipped her tea, feeling warmth spread through her exhausted body. Somewhere out in space, the Keeper of Honor was jumping to light speed, carrying diplomats to a summit that might prevent a war. All because an albino engineer and a stubborn human mechanic refused to accept that some lives weren't worth saving. The news traveled faster than Riley could have imagined. Within days, every station in 3 sectors knew about the albino Felixian engineer who'd saved a diplomatic mission. Some called it luck. Others called it impossible. But Commander Blake's official report was clear and detailed. Riley's skills were extraordinary, and her unique sensitivity to electromagnetic fields made her irreplaceable for certain repairs. The response from Felixian society was messy and complicated. High Matriarch Cross issued a public statement that was carefully worded to avoid saying too much. While traditional values remained important, she acknowledged that exceptional skill in service to the clans deserved recognition, regardless of appearance. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close to full acceptance. But it was something. A tiny crack in a wall that had stood for centuries. For Riley, the immediate changes were more practical and overwhelming. Jack's repair shop suddenly became the busiest place on Kara's 9. Ships that would never have docked at their station before were now requesting Riley by name. Captains who'd heard about her work on the Keeper of Honor wanted her expertise for their own vessels. The work requests piled up so fast that Riley couldn't keep track of them all. "We've got 39 jobs waiting," Jack said one evening, scrolling through the queue on his data pad. "Some of these captains are offering triple the normal rates just to bump up the priority list." Riley stared at the numbers, feeling dizzy. "I can't do 39 jobs, Jack. That's months of work. Maybe a year." "I know. We're going to have to start turning people away. Or," Jack hesitated, "or we hire more engineers. Expand the operation." The idea of expanding terrified Riley. More people meant more risk. What if they hired someone who hated albinos? What if word spread and brought more trouble? What if this all came crashing down? But she also couldn't ignore the opportunity. For the first time in her life she had leverage. Choices. The ability to build something real. "Let me think about it," she said. The credits were piling up in Riley's account too. More money than she'd ever imagined having. Enough to rent proper quarters. Enough for medical care and education for the cubs. Enough to be truly independent. The thought should have made her happy. Instead it made her anxious. Independence meant she could leave Jack's shop. Could stop being a burden. Could stand on her own. But Jack's shop had become home. Jack had become family. The thought of leaving made Riley's chest ache in ways she didn't want to examine too closely. She was still wrestling with these thoughts when the second official message arrived. This one came directly from the Felixian Fleet Command. Commander Blake wanted to meet with her. In person. At the Felixian Trade Embassy. "It's definitely a trap," Jack said immediately when she told him. Riley had considered that possibility. Blake seemed different. Respectful. "I don't think he wants to hurt us." Riley, 3 months ago, Felictions who respected you. 0. Felictions who respect you now, maybe 1 or 2. Those aren't great odds. Jack crossed his arms. "If you're going, I'm coming with you. You can't protect me forever. Watch me try." The Felixian Trade Embassy was the fanciest building Riley had ever entered. All polished surfaces and elegant design that screamed wealth and power. The receptionist, a young Felixian female with gorgeous golden fur, stared at Riley for several long seconds before remembering her professional training. "Engineer Riley? Commander Blake is expecting you. This way, please." They were led to a private conference room where Blake waited with 2 other Felixians. One was an older female in diplomatic robes with sharp, calculating eyes. The other was a younger male wearing fleet engineering colors. "Engineer Riley. Mr. Turner." Blake gestured to the chairs across from them. "Thank you for coming." Riley sat carefully, hyper-aware of how her white fur stood out against the room's dark furniture. Every instinct told her to make herself smaller, less noticeable. She fought against it. "I'll get straight to the point," Blake said. "The Felixian fleet wants to hire you as a consultant. We operate over 300 ships using Mark 7 and Mark 8 neural navigation systems. All of them would benefit from the optimization techniques you used on the Keeper of Honor." Riley's ears perked up despite her caution. "You want me to train your engineers?" "More than train them. We want you to oversee a complete fleet-wide upgrade program." Blake slid a data pad across the table. "This is our formal offer." Riley picked up the pad with trembling paws. Her eyes widened as she read the contract. The credits were staggering, more than she'd make in a decade at Jack's shop. Full citizenship restoration for her and the cubs. Legal protection under fleet law. Access to the finest Felixian schools and medical facilities. Everything she'd been denied her entire life, suddenly within reach. Then she got to the conditions section and her heart sank. "You'd need to relocate to Fleet Command Station," the diplomatic female said smoothly. Her nameplate identified her as Ambassador Harper. "That's where our primary maintenance facilities are located. All the work would need to be done on site." Riley's voice came out small. "How far is Fleet Command from Kara's 9? 16 sectors. About 3 months travel at standard speeds." 3 months. Might as well be on the other side of the galaxy. 3 months from Jack. From the shop. From the only home her cubs had ever known. Riley looked at Jack, who'd been silent through the whole presentation. His face was carefully blank, but she could read the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. "Can I have time to think about it?" Riley asked. Blake nodded. "You have 3 days. But I need to be honest with you, this opportunity won't come again. Many in the clans oppose this decision. They believe we shouldn't be accommodating albinos at all, that we're betraying our genetic standards. His golden eyes locked with hers. You proved yourself on my ship. This is your chance to prove yourself to the entire Felixian civilization. To change things for every albino who comes after you. The weight of that statement pressed down on Riley's shoulders. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Ivy, Cole, and Mira growing up in a galaxy that might actually accept them. It was about every other albino Felixian facing the same rejection she'd faced. The meeting ended shortly after. Riley and Jack walked back to the shop in heavy silence. Finally, Jack spoke. You should take it. Riley stopped walking. What? The fleet job. You should take it. Jack's voice was rough, like the words were being dragged out of him. It's everything you need. Everything your cubs deserve. Jack, no. Listen to me. Jack turned to face her, his blue eyes bright with emotion he was trying to hide. I'm an old mechanic running a small shop on a backwater station. That's fine for me. I've made my peace with it. But you? Your cubs? You're meant for bigger things. This shop is our home, Riley said, her voice cracking. Home is wherever your family can thrive. Where your cubs can grow up accepted, not just tolerated. Where they can be proud of who they are instead of hiding. Jack managed a weak smile. You don't need me anymore, Riley. You never really did. You just needed someone to give you a chance to prove yourself. Riley felt tears streaming down her face. You're wrong. We do need you. You're the only family we have. And I'll always be family. Distance doesn't change that. Jack's own eyes were suspiciously bright now. But those cubs deserve to grow up among their own people. To have opportunities one can't give them. To not spend their lives as outcasts. That night, Riley lay awake with her cubs curled against her. Ivy sensed something was wrong. Mama, the older cub whispered. Are we leaving? I don't know, sweetie. I don't want to leave Jack, little Mira mumbled, half asleep. Me neither, Cole added quietly. Riley's heart felt like it was being torn in two. How could she choose between giving her cubs a future and staying with the person who'd saved their lives? The next morning she made her decision. She found Jack in the workshop, elbow deep in a fusion core repair. He looked up as she approached, trying to read her expression. I'm taking the fleet job, Riley said. Jack's face fell, but before he could respond, she continued. But I'm negotiating the terms. I'll do the work remotely. I'll travel to Fleet Command when necessary for training sessions and system upgrades, but my primary base stays here. On Kara's 9. Jack blinked. What? The cubs will grow up here. With you. Because you're family, Jack. Real family. And I don't abandon family. Riley's voice was firm, stronger than she felt. I'll make enough from the fleet contract to expand the shop properly. We can hire more engineers, take on bigger projects. But we do it together. Here. Jack stared at her for a long moment. Then, awkwardly, he pulled her into a hug. It was clumsy, humans and Felixians weren't built for the same embrace. But it was real and warm and perfect. You're going to change everything, you know that? Jack's voice was rough with emotion. We already did. The day you decided to help us. Commander Blake accepted Riley's counterproposal after some negotiation. The clans weren't thrilled about the arrangement, but Blake argued that remote consultation was practical and cost-effective. The fact that Riley's first major project, optimizing the navigation systems on 50 vessels, saved the fleet over 17 million credits in fuel costs helped his argument considerably. Word of the new arrangement spread quickly. And something unexpected started happening. Other Felixians began showing up at the shop. Not the typical spotted, perfect specimens. These were the outcasts. Felixians with genetic variations, with disabilities, with features that made them unemployable in traditional clan society. A young male named Troy arrived first. He had a neural condition that caused tremors in his paws, making him unsuitable for precision work. But Riley recognized immediately that his condition made him hypersensitive to vibrations. Perfect for diagnosing structural problems in ship hulls. Then came Beth, a female whose fur grew in irregular patches. She'd been rejected from every engineering program she'd applied to. Riley hired her on the spot after watching her solve a complex plasma routing problem in under 5 minutes. And then came Leo, an older male who'd lost his hearing in an accident. Traditional shops wouldn't hire him because he couldn't hear warning alarms. But he could read electromagnetic signatures better than anyone Riley had ever met except herself. Jack hired all 3 of them. The shop expanded. What had been one human's small repair bay became something bigger. A refuge. A place where being different wasn't a death sentence. Not everyone was happy about it. The Felixian trade delegation filed official complaints. Some of the station's businesses refused to deal with Jack anymore. There were incidents, slurs painted on the shop's door, threatening messages left on their communication system, a few physical confrontations that station security had to break up. But there were also supporters. Human shop owners who'd faced their own discrimination. Trician merchants who understood what it meant to be judged by appearance. Even a few brave Felicians who publicly defended what Jack and Riley were building. Slowly, carefully, attitudes began to shift. Not everywhere. Not quickly. But the change was happening. One evening, 6 months after fixing the Keeper of Honor, Riley stood in the expanded workshop watching her team work. Troy was running diagnostics on a hull breach. Beth was teaching Ivy advanced plasma theory. Leo was training 2 new hires on electromagnetic field analysis. And Jack was in the corner showing little Mira how to properly calibrate a scanner. This was what they'd built. Not just a business but a community. A family that didn't care about genetics or appearance or arbitrary standards of perfection. Commander Blake visited the shop that same evening. He looked around at the bustling operation with something like wonder. "You've created something remarkable here," he said to Riley. "We all did. Together." Blake nodded slowly. "I have another proposition for you. High Matriarch Cross wants to establish a formal program, the Genetic Diversity Initiative. Legal protections for Felicians with variations, guaranteed access to education and employment. She wants you to head it." Riley's breath caught. "Me? Head a government program? You've proven what's possible. You've shown that our old standards were costing us talent and ability. But..." Blake hesitated. "The position would require you to relocate to the clan homeworld. Permanently." There was again. The same choice. Power and influence in exchange for leaving home. Riley didn't even have to think about it this time. "No. But I'll consult on the program. I'll help train others to do the work. I'll travel for important meetings." She gestured around the workshop. "But my home is here. With Jack and my team and my cubs. That's not negotiable." Blake studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "The matriarch thought you might say that. She's prepared to make it work. And..." He pulled out a small case. "She wants to make things official." Inside the case was a medallion, the Star of Unity. One of the highest honors in Felixian society. "This is for both of you," Blake said looking at Jack. "For showing the clans what we'd forgotten. That worth isn't determined by appearance. That the strongest communities are built on inclusion, not exclusion." Jack looked uncomfortable with the attention as always. "I just helped some folks who needed it." "Exactly," Blake said quietly. "You just did what was right. And you changed everything." That night, after everyone had gone home, Riley and Jack sat in the quiet workshop. The Star of Unity sat on the workbench between them, catching the light. "You know what's funny?" Jack said. "A year ago, I was just a lonely old mechanic counting down to retirement. Now look at us." Riley smiled, her white fur reflecting the workshop lights. "Now we're changing the galaxy. One repair at a time. One person at a time," Riley corrected. "That's how real change happens. One person choosing kindness. One person seeing worth where others see weakness. One person deciding that the old ways aren't good enough anymore." Jack raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To new ways then." Riley clinked her teacup against it. "To family. The kind you choose." And in that quiet moment, in a small repair shop on a backwater station, 2 very different people celebrated the simple miracle they'd created together. A place where everyone belonged. Where differences were strengths. Where family wasn't about matching fur or shared genetics, but about standing beside each other when the rest of the galaxy turned away. It wasn't perfect. The fight was far from over. But it was a start. And sometimes, a start is all you need to change everything. 3 years. That's how long it had been since Riley and her cubs had huddled in that cold maintenance corridor, starving and desperate. Sometimes it felt like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. Riley was running diagnostics on a fusion core when Jack came into the workshop with that look on his face. The one that meant something big was about to happen. "We've got a visitor," he said. "A really important visitor." Riley set down her tools carefully. "How important are we talking?" "High Matriarch Cross herself. She's on her way to the station right now. Wants to meet with you personally." Riley's paws went cold. The supreme leader of all Felixian clans was coming here? To Kara's 9? To see her? Why? Riley's voice came out as barely a whisper. Jack shrugged, but his eyes were worried. The message didn't say. But Commander Blake is with her, so I'm guessing it's fleet business. Or maybe something to do with that genetic diversity initiative you've been consulting on? Riley looked down at herself. She was covered in grease and coolant, her white fur matted with the day's work. I need to clean up. When does she arrive? 2 hours. 2 hours to prepare to meet the most powerful Felixian in the galaxy. The same Felixian whose government had created the laws that destroyed Riley's life. Riley felt like she might throw up. Hey. Jack's hand landed on her shoulder. You've got this. You fixed her ships, trained her engineers, and helped write laws that are changing Felixian society. She should be nervous to meet you, not the other way around. Riley managed a weak smile. You always know what to say. That's what dads do. The word hung in the air between them. Dad. Jack had never claimed the title officially, but that's what he'd become over the past 3 years. To all 3 cubs. And somewhere along the way to Riley too. Not a father exactly, but family in the truest sense. Riley cleaned up and changed into her best work clothes. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone she barely recognized. Confident. Professional. Successful. The scared, desperate mother from 3 years ago seemed like a different person entirely. The cubs were excited about the High Matriarch's visit. Ivy, now 10 years old, was already planning questions she wanted to ask about fleet engineering. Cole had spent the morning organizing the workshop to make it look more presentable. And little Mira, 7 now and fearless, announced she was going to show the matriarch her collection of ship models. Maybe let's not overwhelm her, Riley suggested gently. The meeting was held in the station's diplomatic suite. High Matriarch Cross was exactly as imposing as Riley had imagined. Silver-spotted fur that marked her age and status, amber eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a presence that filled the entire room. Riley fought every instinct to lower her gaze, to submit, to make herself small. Instead, she met the matriarch's eyes steadily. Engineer Riley, Cross said. Her voice carried absolute authority. Your work with the fleet has been impressive. Commander Blake tells me you've improved efficiency across 300 vessels and trained over 50 engineers in your techniques. I've done my job, High Matriarch. Your job. Cross's tail twitched thoughtfully. Tell me something, engineer. What is your honest opinion of our clan laws regarding genetic variations? The question was clearly a test. Riley knew it. Whatever she said could be used against her, could undo everything she'd built. She decided to tell the truth anyway. I think they're cruel and wasteful. They reject people who could contribute to society based on appearance alone. My albinism gives me enhanced electromagnetic sensitivity. That makes me better at neural interface work than most engineers. The clans almost lost that advantage because they couldn't see past my white fur. Riley's voice was steady. How many other talents have been thrown away because of these laws? How much potential has been wasted? Silence filled the room. Commander Blake looked tense. Ambassador Harper, who'd also attended, looked horrified that Riley had spoken so bluntly to the High Matriarch. Then Cross laughed. It was a sharp, genuine sound. You have courage. I respect that. The matriarch leaned forward. I didn't come here to defend our laws, engineer. I came to acknowledge that they need to change. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The peace summit you helped make possible resulted in a historic treaty. 3 clan territories that have been at war for 50 years are now united. Over 100,000 lives have been saved because of that treaty. Riley's breath caught in her throat. Your contribution to that peace cannot be ignored, Cross continued. Nor can the fact that dozens of ships now function better because of your unique abilities. You've forced the clans to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our prejudices have cost us dearly. So what happens now? Riley asked quietly. Now, the clan councils have voted to establish the Riley Accord. Cross gestured to Blake, who produced an official document with elaborate seals. Named after you. It provides legal protections for Felixians with genetic variations, guarantees equal access to education and employment, and prohibits discrimination based on appearance. It's being signed into law next month. Riley felt tears prickling her eyes. An accord? Named after me? You saved a peace summit and revolutionized our fleet operations. You've earned recognition. Cross's expression softened slightly. But laws are just words on paper. Real change requires people willing to lead, to show others what's possible. Which brings me to my final offer. Riley tensed, already knowing what was coming. I want you to head the Genetic Diversity Initiative within the Felixian government. You would oversee implementation of the Riley Accord throughout clan society. You would have the power to change laws, to protect others like yourself, to reshape how we think about genetics and worth. Cross paused. But the position would require your permanent presence at the clan homeworld. You would need to leave this station. Leave your human mentor. There it was. The ultimate choice. Everything Riley had ever dreamed of: power, acceptance, the ability to protect every outcast Felixian in the galaxy, in exchange for leaving Jack. Riley looked at Jack, who stood quietly against the wall. His weathered face showed nothing, but she could read him now. Could see the fear that he was trying to hide. Not fear of being alone, but fear that she'd sacrifice her dreams for him. No, Riley said firmly. Cross's ears perked in surprise. No. I won't leave Jack. I won't leave Kara's 9. The Cubs are happy here. We have a home, a family, a community we've built together. Riley's voice was strong. But I'll help with your initiative. I'll consult remotely, travel when necessary for important meetings, train others to carry out the work. My team here, we've already proven that you don't need to centralize everything. Good work can happen anywhere. You're refusing a position in the Felixian government? Cross said slowly, like she couldn't quite process it. I'm refusing to abandon the people who matter most to me. The human who stood beside me when my own species turned their backs. The team we've built of outcasts and rejects who are now some of the best engineers in 3 sectors. Riley gestured toward the window, toward the workshop below. What we've created here matters more than any government position. We're proving every single day that your old laws were wrong. That differences make us stronger, not weaker. Ambassador Harper looked scandalized. Commander Blake's whiskers twitched with barely suppressed amusement. And High Matriarch Cross was studying Riley with newfound respect. You would choose a human over advancement in your own society? I'm choosing the people who chose me first. Jack didn't help us because we were Felixian. He helped us because we needed help. Because it was the right thing to do. That's what real family does. Riley's voice softened. Your laws tried to convince me I was worthless. Jack showed me I wasn't. I won't betray that. Cross was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something completely unexpected. She smiled. Not a political smile, but something genuine and warm. Perhaps that is the exact lesson the clans need to learn. Cross stood, her formal robes rustling. Very well, Engineer Riley. We'll adjust the position to accommodate remote work. But I want you present for the accord signing ceremony next month. And I want your human there as well. Riley blinked in confusion. Jack. Why? Because this started with him. Because sometimes the greatest teachers come from the most unexpected places. Cross's amber eyes gleamed with something like mischief. And because I want the clans to see what humanity has that we lost somewhere along the way, the ability to look past surface differences and recognize true worth. The meeting concluded with Riley agreeing to specific terms for her role. As Cross prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Your Cubs, they're receiving proper education? Riley tensed instinctively. Jack's been teaching them. And they're enrolled in the station school. Not sufficient. I'm authorizing full clan scholarships for all 3. They'll have access to the finest educational resources in Felixian space, delivered remotely. Cross's expression softened. They're innocent in all this. They deserve every opportunity. After the matriarch left, Riley found Jack in the workshop, explaining to Mira why she couldn't use the plasma torch without supervision for the 100th time. Jack. Riley's voice shook. He looked up immediately, concerned. What happened? Riley told him everything. About the accord, about the position, about the scholarships. About Cross wanting Jack at the signing ceremony. Jack listened in silence, his weathered face unreadable. You should have taken the full position, he finally said. No. I shouldn't have. Riley. You gave us a home when we had nothing. You treated us like we mattered when the entire galaxy said we were worthless. You're the reason Ivy believes she can be an engineer. You're the reason Cole has the confidence to run his own business. You're the reason Mira feels safe. Riley's voice broke. How could I ever leave you? Jack rubbed his face, looking deeply uncomfortable with emotions as always. Kid, I just did what anyone should do. But they didn't. You did. And that's everything. Mira, who'd been listening from behind a workbench, suddenly ran over and wrapped her small white arms around Jack's leg. You're our Jack. We're keeping you forever. Jack looked down at the cub, then at Riley, then at Ivy and Cole who'd emerged from the part storage room. Well, he said gruffly, his voice suspiciously rough. Guess I'm stuck with you lot then. Guess so, Riley agreed, her heart full. The accord signing ceremony was held on the Keeper of Honor, now serving as a floating embassy. Every major clan leader attended, along with representatives from dozens of allied species. The ceremony was broadcast across Felixian space, billions watching. And in the front row, wearing his cleanest coveralls and looking profoundly uncomfortable, sat Jack Turner. Riley stood on the ceremonial platform in formal Felixian dress, her white fur brushed to perfection. Her cubs stood beside her, equally formal and nervous. This was being recorded for history. They were making history. High Matriarch Cross gave a speech about progress and learning from mistakes. About building a better future for all Felictions, not just those who fit narrow genetic standards. Then she called Riley forward to sign the Riley Accord as its first official advocate. Riley's paw trembled as she pressed it to the digital signature pad. This was real. Albinos and other Felictions with genetic variations would have legal protection now. Not perfect protection, not universal acceptance, but a foundation to build on. Then Cross did something that left the entire audience speechless. She called Jack to the platform. "Jack Turner," Cross said, her voice carrying through the hall and across broadcast to billions of viewers. "You are not Felixian. You have no clan, no bloodline, no standing in our society by traditional law. Yet you did what many of our own people would not. You recognized worth where others saw only defect. You offered kindness where others offered cruelty." Jack looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Public attention was clearly his personal nightmare. "The clans owe you a debt," Cross continued. "Without your intervention, Engineer Riley and her cubs would likely have perished. The peace summit would have failed. Hundreds of thousands of lives have been saved because you chose compassion over prejudice." Cross produced a medallion on a silver chain. "This is the Star of Unity. It has been awarded only 17 times in clan history, always to Felictions who made extraordinary contributions to our civilization. You will be the first non-Felixian to receive it." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Some approving, many surprised, a few clearly disapproving. Jack accepted the medallion awkwardly. "I just helped some folks who needed help. That's all." "That," Cross said quietly, loud enough for the microphones to catch, "is precisely why you deserve it." As the ceremony concluded, Riley stood beside Jack while dignitaries offered congratulations. Some genuine, others coldly formal. But it didn't matter anymore. They'd won. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Later, back at the shop, Riley found Jack on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. She settled beside him, their different bodies finding comfortable positions through long practice. "You know what's funny?" Jack said. 4 years ago I was just counting down to retirement. Lonely, going through the motions. Now look at us." Riley looked down at the workshop below. It had expanded to take up an entire deck now. 23 employees of various species, including 7 Felictions with genetic variations. Ships from across 3 sectors coming for repairs. Young engineers learning that being different wasn't a curse. "Now we're changing the galaxy," Riley said softly. "One repair at a time. One person at a time," Riley corrected. "That's how it really works. One person choosing to be kind. One person seeing potential instead of flaws. One person deciding that the old ways aren't good enough." Jack raised his coffee cup. "To new ways then." Riley clinked her teacup against it. "To family. The kind you build, not the kind you're born with." Down in the workshop, Ivy was teaching a class on plasma systems to 3 new apprentices. Cole was negotiating a supply contract with a Trician merchant, his trading business now spanning 4 stations. And Mira was in the simulator, practicing flight maneuvers because she'd decided she wanted to be a pilot. They were thriving. All of them. Not despite their differences but because of them. The Riley Accord would spread. Already, other species governments were drafting similar legislation. The Trician Assembly had passed their version. The Corellian Combine was debating reforms. Even species known for rigid traditionalism were having conversations they'd never had before. Change was slow. There was still prejudice, still resistance, still Felictions who would never accept albinos regardless of what the law said. But the trajectory was clear. Things were getting better. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely better. And it had all started here. In a small repair shop on a backwater station. With one human mechanic who looked at a desperate mother and her cubs and decided that kindness didn't need a reason. "You know what I hope?" Riley said suddenly. "What's that?" "I hope someday cubs like mine won't need someone like you to save them. I hope someday they'll just be accepted from the start. That their own people will see their worth without someone having to prove it first." Jack was quiet for a moment. "That's a good hope. We'll keep working toward it. Together? Always together." As the station's artificial night cycle dimmed the lights, Riley felt a profound sense of peace. The future was still uncertain. The fight was far from over. But they had something powerful now. Hope. Community. Proof that change was possible. And most importantly, they had each other. A family built not on genetics or species or matching fur patterns, but on something stronger. On choosing to stand beside each other when the rest of the galaxy turned away. On believing that everyone deserves a chance. On understanding that our differences aren't weaknesses to overcome, but strengths to celebrate. Riley looked at Jack, this gruff, weathered human who'd changed her entire world, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Jack just squeezed her shoulder gently. "You don't need to thank me. You're family. That's what family does." And in that simple statement was everything. The whole truth of what they'd built together. A place where everyone belonged. Where kindness was stronger than prejudice. Where one person's compassion could ripple outward and change the galaxy. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it was theirs. And sometimes that's all you need to change everything.